The chapter starts with Luffy, who is already holding Chopper and hurtling through the air, spots someone and yells, "Who is that?" He realizes it is none other than the young girl, Jewelry Bonnie. Luffy holds Jewelry Bonnie by ankle to save her from drowning in the water grave below and exclaims she just popped out the water. Jewelry Bonnie is barely conscious with water spitting out of her mouth as she gasps for air, coughing and panting. Jewelry Bonnie coughs and realizes that she is saved, but is unable to recognize the people who rescued her, probably because of her watery eyes, and yells who is there. Before she could figure out her rescues, her attention turns to something important, and she asks, "Wait, where did that monster go?" She looks below and she catches a sight that made her eyes turn wide. She shouts to warn the Straw Hats that there is something below them. Bonnie tells them to look down. As the crew look below, they are left shocked. One of the crew members yell, "There is something scary beneath us." The crew members recognize it is Mega Shark below, and Thousand Sunny is looking like a tiny dot in front of the mega creature. As the creature is about to swallow them, the group decide to scram before it surfaces. The creature breaks out of the surface of ocean water with a snap and knocks the ship in the air. On one hand, Sunny is knocking in the air, and on the other hand, Zoro, who is clinging to the deck, equips his sword and yells, "What the hell is this thing? It is a shark, but no, it can't be because it is too big, and it is made of metal." Jinbei, who is controlling the ship, tells the crew to hold on tight, as it is going to be a rough landing. Jinbei then sees that Luffy and others fell in the sea as a splash sound can be heard. As Jinbei is a fisherman, he has to go and save the crew. He orders Franky to take the helm of the ship and steer the ship over to them. Jinbei asks Franky if he got it. Jinbei jumps into the ocean water to rescue the crew, while Franky realizes that the ship Sunny needs a rapid speed, and therefore, he activates the keel attachment. As he does so, the parts of ship clank and then click. Franky pulls out a rabbit screw propeller and begins to rush the ship in rapid speed to save it from the shark. The metal shark, however, does not step, and with beep sounds, it fires several torpedoes at the ship. The torpedoes move in the direction of ship, and within a split second, there is a big blast. With a massive boom, some filler sounds can be heard from the crew, and one of them yells, "What was that?" With the ship turning upside down, the crew finds it a crap and realize that they are capsizing. With that, they are knocked towards the watery grave. As they fell in the water where the mega shark is waiting for them, the crew lets out a desolate cry. Jinbei, hearing the sound, quickly rushes to save Luffy, Chopper, and Bonnie. Jinbei exclaims that they don't need to worry as he is here. Jinbei concludes that the noise he heard sounded like an explosion. He then grabs the three and tells them that they are heading up. Jinbei reaches at the surface of the water and sees a tremendous current in which steering a ship is next to impossible. At that moment, the metal shark widely opens his mouth and turns its attention to Jinbei. Jinbei sees that the shark has fired a cannon at them and orders everyone to hold their breath as they are going to dive. The three of them coughs, take a deep breath, and then Jinbei says, "Here we go." Jinbei with the three crew members dive back into the water and avoids the cannon attack. Jinbei with the crew swims to the ocean surface from inside. The Straw Hats, on the other hand, realize that the waves are too strong and they can't get back up. The shark's attention turns to the Straw Hats because the ship is drowning. The shark makes a swishing sound and is about to slurp the Straw Hats. The shark realizes a mega creature behind it. The mega creature is a Vega Force 1 robot. The mega robot sees the shark and starts punching it. While the robot is continuously bashing the shark, Luffy and his crewmates are still struggling to come to the surface of water. Meanwhile, on a nearby island resides G-14 Naval Base. At the base, a girl wearing glasses says, "Be good boys and girls as it is medicine time now." The girl is the Navy headquarters captain, Toshigi, who is looking after the children previously rescued from the Vegapunk Island. One of the kids say, "I am only drinking this because Toshigi said so." The kids find the medicine yuck. "Mocha," a girl says, "we have all shrunk quite a lot, have not we?" Toshigi replies that absolutely, as she hardly recognizes Mocha. Toshigi is then interrupted by someone who asks her if she got a second. The girl says to Toshigi that the talk is about the pest, Helmeppo, and asks her, can she do something about it? The girl is G-Chief Commander Vice Admiral Dahl. Tashigi replies that she cannot do anything as Helmeppo's best friend's life is on the line, and she too is worried about Captain Kobe, as he is their junior as a Marine after all. Soon, Navy Headquarters Lieutenant Commander, part of Sword, Helmeppo says, "Please, you have to listen. I am begging you, we are all on the same side." Along with him, Navy Headquarters Commander, part of Sword, Hibari says, "I second this. I owe Kobe-senpai." They are begging Navy HQ Rear Admiral and fellow Sword member, Prince Grus, to go with them to Hachinosu to rescue Kobe. Grus says that Pirate Island is the Emperor Blackbeard's home turf, and they will be swarmed by pirates if they stick their noses into that beehive. And that is why it is called Hachinosu. Helmeppo weeps and says Egghead is so close to us. Why can't we deploy a Seraphim? Grus yells, "Are you crazy?" Grus then tells both of them to calm down. Grus then says that at the moment, we can't get a hold of Drake, the Sword Group leader, either, and we are in no position to act right now. Is that clear? Luffy's group is on the land because of Jinbei. There, Bonnie says to Luffy, "How can you not know who I am?" She then tells him that she is also a part of Worst Generation, just like him. Bonnie says, "We were both on Sabati 2 years ago." Luffy surprisingly replies, "You were part of it too." Bonnie then asks him that, what is the deal with his wanted poster? She thought that his hair is white now, and it also made a stir about it in the paper. Luffy replies that he looks like that when he is totally free. Bonnie asks him, what does that mean? She then asks him, is not he worried about the rest of his crew? Luffy replies that they will figure it out on their own. Bonnie says she cannot believe he has got the Knight of the Sea, Jinbei, with you. Jinbei says, since we are talking on the subject, what happened to your ship and crew? Bonnie says that she came alone as the metal monster back there gobbled up her ship. She says that reminds me I am starving. Luffy say let's go and find a restaurant as I am hungry too. Chopper asks, Luffy, does he have money? Bonnie says, you guys don't have a clue that you are not going to find any food joints here as this is a government island, and does she need to spell everything out? Bonnie says, we are on Egghead Island. The island that is said to be 500 years in the future. Dr. Vegapunk's research lab is also based here. Luffy exclaims that he knows the name Vegapunk. Bonnie says that Vegapunk is the reason she is here as they have got business. The big Vegapunk robot has now put up the 1,000 Sunny, saving everyone from drowning. The crew gasps for air, feeling that they are finally above the waves. Frankie becomes excited. Same goes for the others. Zoro, however, does not let his guard down. Just as the crew is excited seeing the giant robot, they hear a voice that says, this won't do at all. It is another failure. I wonder why though. Perhaps overriding primal desires is simply impossible. The crew sees somebody's body coming out. A young girl comes out, leaving the group surprised. Franks thanks her for saving them. The girl replies to him, whoever you are, I ordered the mechanical shark to scout. Report and fire. But if it keeps trying to eat ships, there won't be anything left to salvage. I must have bungled the programming. The girl then says, forgive me, but did you say I just saved you? You naive pirates! I work for the government despite me mediocrity. And they like to call me their scientific genius. The girl then reveals her identity saying you can call me Dr. Vegapunk. The crew is left in awe. The chapter begins with the declaration that the woman is Vegapunk when is a bewildering development. Hearing the declaration, the crew is surprised and chattering with each other about it. Vegapunk finds it annoying and says, what a fracas. Frankie tells Vegapunk that she is his role model. He then talks about his past where he spent 2 years in her hometown, Baltimore. Frankie then tells her about his experiences at her lab and says, after going through your lab, there was still a load of stuff I did not get a chance to look into. He calls it a giant mech of his dreams. Usopp says, just how many times is the robot bigger than General Frankie, and expresses that he can't wait to show it to Luffy and Chopper. Sanji, meanwhile, calls her a stunning lady. Vegapunk, hearing their words and them calling her role model, is confused and unable to grasp it. Robin, however, says, just a moment. This is the first time I have heard of Vegapunk being a woman, and she looks far too young. What is making her suspicious is that the girl looks too young while Vegapunk has been active for many years. Dr. Vegapunk replies, "Who said this was the main Stella body?" She says, "You are looking at Punk 2 Vegapunk Lilith." Dr. Vegapunk Lilith says, "In any case, we always run through our research funds in a jiffy, so she will allow them to skedaddle if they just relinquish their valuables." Nami yells at her words and says that these waters are chilly enough without her being cold too. She yells that Vegapunk just fished them out, and what kind of rescues does she calls it? Vegapunk replies yelling too, "Are you deaf? This is not a rescue!" Lilith says that trespassing on the waters is not possible as any ship that comes here and resists gets destroyed by her army. Lilith soon reveals her army to the entire crew and says, "Take a look at the sea weaponized breasts." Most of the crew members start panicking as she calls her army unable to comprehend what's happening. One shouts, "They just popped out!" Frankie, who is not panicking, says, "Weaponized sea breasts are rad." Usopp says that his fear is overwhelming his awe. Zoro is not panicking while Nami is crying in panic. Meanwhile, the crew is panicking. Somebody calls her saying, "Farah." The person who is calling her is Shaka, who says, "Lilith, what are you doing?" He questions her why does she always insists on looting and tells her to have some pride as a scientist. Lilith tells Shaka to put a sock in it and asks him, "Can your infernal pride keep the lights going on?" Shaka informs her that she is dealing with the Straw Hat Pirates, a newly dubbed Emperor crew who is not going to meekly surrender. Lilith says that they must have a heap of treasure stashed away. Shaka warns her that even so, she made a foolish blunder. Lilith replies that she has not made a blunder as she has them surrounded. Shaka tells her to not underestimate them and points her attention to the swordsman. Lilith looks at the crew with wide eyes. Shaka then tells her about the pirate hunter, Zoro, whose bounty is more than 1 billion, and tells her that he is looking so calm because he knows she is in the range for him to end her in an instant. Lilith looks at Zoro in confusion while Zoro looks calm. Shaka then says that the same goes for Devil Child Nico Robin, who is looking calm. Lilith expresses her view that what the crew can do against the sea breasts. Shaka exclaims that the strong can appraise their prey and prioritize the most essential targets first, and tells her that she should have been more cautious. Lilith realizes that the imbeciles around the crew have lulled her into a false sense of security and accepts that she was careless. At the moment, Zoro informs Dr. Vegapunk that there is something they want from her, and tells her Tat she would better play nice. Shaka agrees to consider the crew's demands, and asks Lilith to bring them here as he has interest in that crew. Meanwhile on the Egghead Island, Luffy asks Bonnie if she has been here before. Bonnie replies that she visited the place when she was a kid, and it was still a pretty run-of-the-mill lab at the time though. Luffy then asks her that how come she came back here. Bonnie tells him that she is here for the answers, and I will have a bad life if I don't like what I hear. As the group is making their way up to the island's surface, Bonnie reveals that Vegapunk is the one who turned her dad into a cyborg. Luffy finds it awesome. Vegapunk tells him that it is completely not as his father lost his sense of self, and he does not even know who he is anymore. He is nothing but a living weapon now. Luffy calls it awful and exclaims that it is really unforgivable. Luffy then says sorry to Bonnie. As they reach the surface, Chopper says, "We have made it to the surface." Nami and Frankie are tired off climbing. Luffy is happy reaching at the surface and says, "Let's track down some grub." Bonnie then remembers that she forgot to mention that she ran into Spo at Mary Joy's, but she decides to spill the beans later. The crew is left surprised seeing the theme park on the island, and one of the crew members exclaims, "What is all this stuff?" One member says that is it a giant robot. The crew finds all sorts of things there, from the robot to a space monster. Jinbei expresses that, "What is the world?" The other crew member says he will be back after he takes one for a ride. Bonnie says, "Remember, we are infiltrating this place." Chopper asks Luffy to take care while Luffy slingshots himself towards the monster like a rocket. It seems like the monster has eaten Luffy as the monster's open mouth has now closed. Chopper and Bonnie are shocked and yells, "Luffy has been eaten!" However, Luffy has not been eaten but harmlessly passes through the monster and is knocking in the air before colliding with the ground. Jinbei asks Luffy if he is okay. Luffy says that initially he thought he got swallowed, but He is unable to complete his words because Bonnie interrupts them in between, yelling, "Is that a giant parfait?" pointing their attention to a direction. She says there are cookies and fruits too, and look at all that cream. Luffy, Bonnie, and Chopper jumps towards the meal, thanking for the meal. Jinbe, however, stays behind and says, "Hold it. Why would they leave food lying around?" and calls it a trap. As the three falls on the food, they screech, landing harmlessly. Luffy, Bonnie, and Chopper are even more confused as they reach towards the food. Jinbe observes all this, looking confused too. Luffy exclaims that, "What is this?" as they went through it. Chopper says that how can we see it but not touch it? He chomps and says it is so cruel to make them hungry like that. One of them says, "Did we die earlier and not notice?" Bonnie replies, "There is no way we are ghosts," and realizes that though she has not seen one before, but the parfait must be a hologram. Luffy, hearing these, rages in fury and says it ticks me off. Bonnie explains that it is a 3D image made of light. You see them in comics and science stuff. Luffy looks at the space monster and realizes that he went through it because it is a hologram too. Jinbe then says that the giant robot must be one too, as nobody can make something like that. Chopper then notices a machine and asks, "What is this?" He notices that all the buttons have pictures of food on them. Bonnie replies that she has given up already, as everything on the island is a sham. Jinbe then exclaims that this reminds him that the seas around the island were freezing, and someone would expect this place to have the same climate. But considering the place to be a winter island, the environment is set to tropical mode in here. At that moment, a tall girl appears and says that with her island aircon invention, you can specify and regulate the temperature of an area right down to the soil. Luffy says the girl is as big as Kaido, and thinks that she is a hologram too. Thinking the girl a hologram, Luffy attacks her, which angers the girl, and she punches him back, saying, "Take it!" Following the punch, Luffy knocks in the air, exclaiming that he is sorry, and slams onto the machine Chopper was looking at, causing a beep sound. As Luffy clonks onto the machine drops something. The machine starts creating food, lettuce, tea, burger, fries, start dropping in. Bonnie grabs the food and then exclaims that she can touch the food and it is real, with hunger dripping her tongue. Bonnie, Luffy, and Chopper feasts on the machine's food, calling it so good. The three tells each other to press the next one. Different types of food drops from the machine. Observing this, the tall girl says, "Well, at least you appreciate my work," and tells them that it is the unmanned device. It can turn raw ingredients into one of 500 unique dishes in under a minute. The tall girl tells them that the make do with what you have got mode is the best. The tall girl then expresses that she cannot be too happy since a lack of competent engineers means that this bucket of bolts cannot be mass-produced. Is following the blueprints damn hard? The tall girl then says it really pisses me off and that the island aircon is in the same boat. Its sensors can monitor living creatures, and it could tame the weather if she had a bit more money. The girl has endless ideas, but not enough resources. In her frustration, she punches the hologram monster, which surprises everyone. She explains that she has photonic gloves, which allow her physically interact with light. A new hollow fizzles life into a girl with P28 on her top. She gives the tall girl a high five as the scientist explains something is only real if you can perceive it. But touching a projected object turns that on its head, does not it? Luffy, while eating food, says so that girl is not real? The tall girl turns angry and says, "Debates on what makes something real are as old as time. It is something you have to decide for yourself, but I consider the matter settled." Jinbe asks the tall girl who she is. The tall girl says that she is their resident, scientific genius for hire, Dr. Vegapunk Atlas, Punk 5. Everyone is shocked, and Bonnie says that the girl is lying. Luffy exclaims that he has heard the name Vegapunk as Kobe told him about her. Now we cut to the oceans, a new world, where a ship is sailing. Aboard are the CP0 agents Rob, Lucci, Stussy, and Kaku, wearing white outfits. Kaku tells Lucci to just keep listening, as he tells him that Vegapunk is technically still a single individual. Kaku tells Lucci that his genius is second only to his business and has not enough time. Kaku says to Lucci, "You say they say you are a busy beaver, right?" Lucci says imagine as there were more than one beaver. That was his grand idea to split up into 6 people. In other words, all 6 of the satellites are also Dr. Vegapunk, as he split himself into 6 satellite bodies. Kaku is holding a paper on which the 6 satellites of Vegapunk are mentioned. Punk 1, Shaka, whose trait is logic. Punk 2, Lilith, whose trait is evil. Punk 3, Edison, whose trait is flair. Punk 4, Pythagoras, whose trait is wisdom. Punk 5, Atlas, whose trait is wrath. And Punk 6, Yoke, whose trait is desire. Lucci says that he feels like the weird one for being only one, thinking that it impossible and how geniuses are such a pain. Lucci says that their mission is to first return the Seraphim, the problem child, back to the Egghead Island. Kaku says that they need to take care not to damage any of the lab's precious assets, as they are here to eliminate every last Vegapunk. Lucci says that they are meant to kill the single most useful man in the world, and wonders if this has something to do with the recent Lelouchia incident. Stussy says, someone with instincts like yours should know better than to question these things. Kaku agrees to Het and says, don't get us in any hot water, Lucci. They have made a calculated plan.